I was living in a 1-bedroom condo and he was renting an apartment. And we felt that if he was going to move into my condo with me, we would be way too cramped.
You gotta move or you gotta decide to stay there for a year. That certainly is a thing. And like going between properties, it's like, versus just having one place where you can just hang out together all the time.
Oh yeah, some nervousness, especially because we wanted this house to be our, forever house.
What was the most like challenging part of the entire process?
Probably the most challenging part was...
All right, welcome back to another episode of MillenniUP. Tonight, I have Ryan and Laura with me. They are past clients that we helped move into a house in Ambler outside of Philadelphia. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring these two on because they are a super nice couple. They came to me, I guess, at the end of last year, and I think how long did we search for a house, guys?
Almost 3 months.
3 months, yeah, about
3 months.
Yeah, somewhere in that.
Well, you know what? I know exactly when we had our first call because I was in Atlantic City for a conference, so that was the beginning of December, and then we placed an offer almost 2 months later.
Super Bowl Sunday.
Super
Bowl Sunday. So there's a couple of unique things about these two, both in the deal and just like kind of who they are. Mm-hmm. But you guys want to just give us like the 30,000 foot view on who you are, where you come from, what makes you tick?
Well, we're both from the Philadelphia area, and I work as a physical therapist. So that's how I came in contact with Seth, because my company and him are in a business networking group. So that's how we got in touch. Yep.
Yeah. As Laura said, we both grew up kind of similar areas. I work as an oncologist in North Philly, and we kind of were just looking for some place in between our commutes to kind of make it someplace where we can move into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we had to thread the needle between Norristown and North Philly.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
So that was taking us kind of across kind of like, I guess the bottom of Montgomery County was fair game. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, we didn't see that many houses. I think we only saw maybe 10, 12, if that.
Yeah, because I feel like with our schedules, we really only looked at houses on weekends. And I mean, we went to a couple of open houses, but yeah, I feel like by the time we got to that point, we had narrowed down what we had wanted. And so we didn't have to see a whole lot of houses because we could just take some off the table right away.
Well, I think you guys did a good job with that questionnaire. And you also had a pretty, I think, confining, like you really, like with the very first house we saw over in Horsham, it was like, you're like, yeah, this is the style we want. So then once we knew the style we wanted, and then I think I still took you to some like older homes. So just for the record, these two live in like a 1995-ish, home with 9-foot ceilings and, if you're watching the video, that ceiling's that's got to be like a 20-foot ceiling, 18-foot ceiling.
Yeah.
So, 2-story living room, really, really nice house, but I was still taking them over because of geography. I was still taking them over to see some houses that were built in the 60s and 70s. And there was that one we saw. It was like the very first one on that Saturday, and it was like a fixer upper. And I could just tell by looking at Ryan, he's like, I don't think I'm going to fit in this house. This is
Yep.
Yeah, there was that one in particular, if I'm remembering right, was like I was ducking a lot, and the hallways just weren't.
They were really they weren't Ryan sized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, that's a big thing. I mean, I just put someone in a house. He was 6'6", and yeah, like the size of the house matters. Where it's like. If it's like it's tight, his biggest problem is when he was coming down the stairs in those houses, he was knocking his head on the ceiling, So, and he ended up buying like pretty much what you bought, which was like a 1997, house in Lower Gwinnett. So, So why don't you tell us, like, what was the catalyst? What was the thing where you guys turned, looked each other in the eyes, and said it's time to buy a house?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I feel like got to a point in our relationship where we were like, okay, we want to take steps forward, and we're not married. But we decided that we wanted the first steps to be buying a house versus getting married, because that's where we wanted to spend our money. So we were like, let's spend money on the house that we're going to be in for a very long time, first, because that was what was most important to us. And then we were kind of like, well, once we buy the house and settle in, then we can see what we have left to spend on a wedding. So yeah, so
that's interesting. So you moved into a house. You moved into a house before you got married because you wanted to deploy your money on that, and you're not going to be spending on a wedding,
We're
or you're
still
going to be spending money on both.
We're still planning the wedding as well, but
Yeah.
it's more the fact that we figured the house would probably be the bigger expense.
Hopefully
the house is the
I
bigger.
hope.
The house is the bigger expense. And we before we bought this house, I was living in a 1-bedroom condo, and he was renting an apartment. And we felt that if he was going to move into my condo with me, we would be way too cramped.
Yeah.
So that was the reason we as well bought the house and didn't just move into my condo.
Was there anything to be said about just like living together and, before getting married, before tying the knot? I mean, it's a big obligation, it's a big commitment, but did you guys have any concern about like living together? Because that was the thing. My wife like moved down from North Jersey, and she's like, I just need to see if I can live in the same state as you. Before
No, I was never concerned about that.
Yeah, I don't think so, because we were already at the point where we were each weekend we were packing and going to one or the other house.
Yeah.
So
you're both very agreeable people. Like you're pretty laid back.
Yeah.
So I can see that. But so you guys were basically living at each other's places every weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. So what is because we actually are going to release an episode, and I don't know when it's going to be out, but it is, we talk about this unmarried couples buying, and kind of the throwing all the conventional, I mean, listen, my parents got married in, 1962. My mother was 18, my father was 22. They got married, then they bought a house, and they had kids, and all that. So it's like that conventional wisdom, whether it's just like what people want to do, but also just financially, like some people make that decision to pull that trigger. So was it really like, hey, we want to get married quick, we want to get married soon, so we better get the house? Or was there like almost a catalytic event that just says, hey, do we want to, we just want to do this and just start checking boxes?
I think it was something that we kind of were already talking about, because we were pretty open on our wants and our timeline when we started dating. So we already knew that this was something that we wanted to do.
Okay.
And for one catalyst, my contract for my apartment was coming up. So I was like, okay, do I move in with you? Do we re-up the lease for another year, or do we buy a house? And that was one of those things too, where it's like, okay, that could be one of the catalytic events, if we want to call it that.
Yeah.
But I think
that's super common too. It's like, okay, listen, you got a contract coming to, lease coming to an end, and it's like, okay, the landlord's going to make you, it'll make you sugar get off the pot here. It's like you gotta either move, or you gotta decide to stay there for a year. That certainly is a thing. And like going between properties, it's like, versus just having one place where you can just hang out together all the time. That certainly is a big driver. So what was like your expectations? Like, did you have any any hesitancy about like the process? Were you nervous about anything? Were you nervous about like getting a loan? Were you nervous about like looking at houses, the offer? The market's been crazy. So like, were you nervous at all about the deal and like winning bidding wars?
Yeah, I think so. Just because, I feel like just talking to people generally in the past couple of years, people have been telling us like stories of like, yeah, we bid on so many houses, didn't get any,
Hmm.
and we've looked at 50 houses and have to bid on a house that you settled for or overbid and that kind of thing. So yeah, there was a lot of oh yeah, some nervousness, especially because we wanted this house to be our, forever house.
Hmm.
So we didn't want to have to settle for anything, and we didn't want to, you know, also be looking at hundreds of houses. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
As you know, with our schedule, we barely have time to look at
yeah,
the 12 that
Yeah.
we did.
yeah,
But no, yeah, because I'd never been through this process before. I had a lot of questions, and so it was a lot of back and forth to try figuring out what I needed to know. I I don't think the loan aspect was as much of a concern. It was more figuring out what I needed to know and what I was needed to look for in the house.
yeah. I don't think the loan was a concern. I did get a lot of like when I told people, especially patients, like, oh yeah, we're looking to buy a house. I feel like I got a lot of why are you buying a house right now with the interest rates being where they are, and I was like, well, this is the right time for us to buy. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really decent point because life does march on,
yeah,
beyond a
mhm,
payment, and you guys are both in a position where you have some means to cover a payment and get creative with financing. And I know that Ryan, especially you and the lender, Mike, had a lot of conversations about like what does this mean, like putting like this amount of money down, this amount of money down. But no, I mean, but there are times when it's like, okay, it's just time to move and we'll
yeah,
figure it out,
yep,
and it doesn't mean that couples need to be reckless. It doesn't mean that people need to make bad financial decisions. But if it's a stretch temporarily, like that's okay. And frankly, that's actually a very conventional outcome in housing, and it has been for decades. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, even me, I mean, I bought 3 houses in my life, and each one of them, I'm like, payment,
yeah,
Now and yeah, and we've had a lot of conversations with people on this podcast, and that's a very common thing. Like, what are you doing buying a house right now? Like, why are you doing it? But if you're going to be in a house for an extended amount of time, your income's going to continue to increase.
mhm,
Payment is going to stay not the same, but it's kind of locked in time. And then if
Mhm.
you're going to stay there, it's like it becomes like there. I remember the last house I was in. I was in there for 9 years, and it was like it became very manageable for that payment over
yeah,
time.
Mhm.
mhm,
And so I think there's some wisdom in that. Again, we're not trying to make people like be reckless about this or anything like
mhm,
that. What so we got you guys coached up in a hurry. I think that was a combination of the lender and our team.
yes.
You guys did a great job on your questionnaire. We'll have that, by the way. It's funny too because I have people who ask me for that, and I'm like, no, no, no. Like you gotta sign on the dotted line before you get that questionnaire. Because it really does a great job of distilling down like what you're looking for, where you're looking, because you're exactly the type of people I love to work with, and you're hardworking professionals. You have limited amount of time, and like you could call a realtor and definitely have a situation where they're totally disorganized. They don't know how to ask the right questions while on site. And
Yeah,
I always tell my clients, like, and I think I told you guys this because I started doing this like late last year, is I very much like bring you into like the quote sales process. It's not really a sales process. What it is like a consultation on the sale of a piece of real estate. And I
yeah,
am able to just ask you guys questions in front of each other. So you
mhm.
answer them in front of each other because I remember a few times when I asked something, Laura said something, and then Ryan like crane necked, like, wait, what? And but like that's okay because that's important. It's like, oh, I
Mhm,
didn't know you thought that. Like
mhm,
that's interesting, or like, oh, I hadn't considered that. So if a good realtor can get you in a room and start asking you questions so you can start to kind of clarifying exactly what you're looking for. So then when you do walk into a house on a Super Bowl Sunday or the day before Super Bowl Sunday, I think we saw it on Super Bowl Sunday, didn't we? The house you're sitting in?
We first saw it the day before, then we went back the morning.
That's right. That's right.
Again. Yeah.
And you guys walk in and you like, and I think I told you guys this, you're going to get to a point where you walk into a door and you're going to kind of know like this is it.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, know that this isn't like the only one you can have, like because of a bidding war situation. Did we put in an offer on 2 other houses or one other house?
One other house.
Yeah.
It was Greystone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what? I was standing out because we just saw each other. I was standing out in the front with Julie. I was just thinking to myself, God, you guys have such a killer backyard versus Greystone.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. It ended up very much working out that we did not get the first house.
We are very much happier here than we would have been there.
Yeah. So, and I forgot how deep like the yard goes and everything like that. So that's a killer lot. What was like the most memorable thing you remember from seeing houses?
That's a good question.
Because we didn't see many.
Yeah, we didn't see too many.
I think some of it was the stranger things, I'll say, that we saw in some of the houses.
Yeah, bring it on. Let's see it. Let's hear it.
The orange basement in the Constitution. The one where the basement had a random kitchen in the middle of it and a full shower next to the kitchen. And when you close the closets, the ceiling tiles popped off. And it was a very...
I don't even remember that one.
That might have been one of the open houses we went to.
Oh, yes. That was
yeah.
That's
they even had their screened-in patio was it 8 doors?
Yeah.
Just 8 doors together instead of a wall panel.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I think the most memorable one we actually saw, for me at least, because the one that we saw together was that one on that morning. And then we saw that one with on Gentry, which was, I think that thing's still in the market. It was all stucco.
Yes.
You know, and that was another thing. I was really trying to guide you not away from stucco, but like there was like a whole other thing with stucco, you know, and the houses that you were looking at was like ground zero for bad stucco. So, you know, I know people, it's kind of amazing after all this time that people don't understand about stucco. There's realtors who still don't really kind of understand what's going on, like how it all works and all that. But no, I mean, what was the most like challenging part of the entire process?
Probably the most challenging part was right after we didn't get the first house we put an offer in on.
Okay.
Because that was probably like, oh, this is what people are kind of talking about of the, you know, struggles that people are having nowadays with, you know, not winning bids and, you know, that. So I think that was the most challenging part. But I think we recovered pretty quickly. I think literally the next weekend we went out and just started looking at more places and just tried to be like, all right, that's behind us and we're just moving forward.
Yeah, I think the day of or the 2 days after, we had a lot of second guessing, a lot of conversations of like what we could have done, if there was anything else we could have done. But I agree, that was definitely the hardest parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a part where like I know that most of the public doesn't care, but like for realtors who actually care, like it's really hard on us.
Yeah, I can tell it was hard on you.
It was really hard on me, and I remember I wasn't yelling at the agent, but I'm like, oh my God, it's like these are the nicest people ever. They deserve a house, you know. And it was a weird situation. She went to present offers, and then like someone swooped in with cash, and I was just like, I'm like, come on, I'm like, what are you talking about here? So, it's really hard on us, man, because like we're in the trenches and I'm like, you know, on my phone on the sidelines of soccer fields, like negotiating and brokering these things. And, you know, especially something like that, where it's like, sometimes they can say, I think pretty much they're going to accept your offer. And then they like, I don't hear from them for 2 hours. And then it's like, oh, okay. that is a tough situation. Thankfully, we have gotten really good at winning these bidding wars, or you know, steering people clear of like the really crazy bidding wars where it's like, okay, or like getting my client to like tap out when it's like getting ridiculous, you know, and like sometimes it's better for the buyer to just know like, okay, it's escalated to like this, that, and the other, and it's like it's just not going to happen. Instead of like having to wait all the way till Monday for an offer deadline and all that stuff. I'm pretty good at like pumping information from the agent. I ask a lot of like kind of funny questions in a funny way, which like allows them to be like let their guard down and kind of give me the information. But this one was totally different than when you're sitting in. You just saw it, and then I think Ryan turned to me and you're like, why is this not sold? And I'm like, not really sure, but I'm going to find out. And I remember I called the agent and she's just like, I don't know why it's not selling. I think it's the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl weekend and people were distracted and, you know, it's just that many less buyers going out to see it. And we put a ring on it. That was it.
We heard back very quickly, halftime of the Super Bowl, pretty much.
And that was what Lisa had told me, the agent. She's like, I think they'll sign something like before the Super Bowl. They kind of like want to be done. Like they don't like they want their house back and they don't want to like deal with any of this anymore. Which it's interesting, but it's like there's a lot of agents who won't pick up the phone, but like all I had to do was call Lisa and she's like, please just send me something, you know, send me something they can sign. And because they were moving out of state, weren't they? Or
no, they moved to Huntington Valley.
Okay. And then you had a relationship, like a common relationship, your boss.
So we wrote a buyer's letter, and I in the letter mentions our professions, and it turns out the buyers are very good friends with Ryan's boss. So the buyer called up Ryan's boss and be like, "Hey, what do you know about this guy?"
And it worked out well for us.
He's a serial killer.
Hopefully not.
No, that's good. And then you guys were able to like broker and negotiate furniture into it and all that, which is great because you guys did not have anything. You had an apartment and a condo's worth of stuff.
Yes, which were pretty much all hand-me-down stuff. So
that's fine. And then what's one piece of advice you would give to buyers looking to start the process now? You guys are in pretty similar environments. It's not 2021 environment, so the market's mostly the same in terms of competitiveness. But or like you can talk about like how you got prepared to buy. Like, you know, did you set money aside? Like what's like one piece of advice to a Ryan and Laura of 2 years ago that you would give to the masses here?
I think one of the things that really helped was knowing what we were looking for. Like we kind of knew, even if we didn't know the style of the house, we knew how many bedrooms, bathrooms, this kind of stuff we were interested in. We knew we wanted it around a park, like someplace we could run. We knew things along that nature, which kind of helped us set where we wanted. And knowing that we wanted to be in a location in between our works also helped narrow down the area. So I think that did a lot of the work for us with the fact that we had already had a lot of those discussions before we started looking.
And we had discussions about the money side of it too, obviously between us, but then with Mike, and then also with a financial planner too. So we had the money discussions, like we made a budget, we did all of that beforehand so we could narrow in what we could afford and that kind of thing.
Did you guys go look at open houses before we started seeing houses?
No, not before.
We did some research. As Laura said, we made our budget, figuring out what our maximum tolerable price would be, or mortgage payment would be. So we did some of that on our own, but no open houses.
Okay. And is the house that you're sitting in pretty much in alignment with what you thought you were hoping to be able to sit in before?
Yes.
I think the one big difference is the pool.
Yeah.
As you remember, we were not that interested in the pool in the beginning, and then slowly
somehow that changed.
Hey, you enjoyed the pool?
Absolutely loved it.
There you go. And
Yes.
Ryan is gonna love sitting next to you at that pool while he watches a landscaper mow that lawn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, too
Yeah.
much fire from the mower.
That's fine. And then before we go, we just talk a little bit about your sales. So then we turned around and sold your condo.
Yes. Yeah. That was a great process. We in the beginning, I feel like briefly toyed with the idea of whether to keep the condo and rent it out because the condo was it was in Phoenixville, so it was in a really popular location, and I bought it at a very good time. So I had a really low interest rate. My monthly payment was like $900. So we toyed with the idea of renting, but the deciding factor on that was, the HOA, having an HOA fee that was increasing by a lot every year,
Yeah.
and then just the hassle of having to deal with renters. So we ultimately decided to sell the condo, and that was a pretty easy process. Yeah, it was.
We only had a one bedroom condo. It wasn't a lot to, respectfully, I don't want to understate what you did to prepare that property, but yeah, it was it's a great unit, and I know that the family that or the couple that moved in there, it's just perfect for them. Like
Yeah.
it's like super manageable. They're like a new couple or newlyweds, and
Mhm.
at some point they will probably be with child, and then they're going to sell that place and move out. But it
Yeah.
is it is yeah, and I think we had like God, I think we had like 8-9 offers on that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot. We had our choice, which was nice.
Yeah, we did. And it was funny because I got a call off the internet and I had my partner go in. Well, I shouldn't say my partner, my absent co-host. It was Jen Anuski. And I was like, hey, if you want to show this guy, he sounds pretty serious. And she went in and she did the Jen Anuski thing. She had an offer over to us in like 2 hours. And God, all weekend she was like, oh, you should take this offer because of X. You should take this offer.
Yeah.
Why? And I was like, Laura is like a really reasonable person and she's really agreeable, but she's not signing anything. If we got like a million showings and like 5 agents right now saying that they're going to be placing an offer, it's like, I'm not going to advise her to like just sign the damn thing. So, but Jen does Jen things, and that's what makes her great is she advocates for her client. But no, that was a good process, and that was that was a lot of correspondence and a lot of showings, and it ended up all working out. So, any parting words here for or actually, you know what? Here's a good question for you, Laura. Is any advice on someone selling?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I feel like as long as you have a great realtor who keeps everything organized, streamlined, and tells you what to do, because that was a new process for me.
Yep.
But it was so quick and easy. And minimal work on my part, so it was great. And then the communication of I got lots of updates, and okay, do this by this point, and updates on like, here's what you have to do when you're showing, here's what we have to do when the offers come in. So yeah, made the process very easy.
Yeah, the one thing I really like, and I kind of had to do it during the bidding war, is that offer sheet. So
Yes.
that Google offer, so I literally put a Google sheet together and like I update it in real time. I share it with you, and then like as they come in, you can just kind of see and keep up with it. And then when we actually go to review it, it's not like just this massive block of information you have to like digest on a call. So I try to like kind of spoon feed you all the information. And then so that makes everything like less hectic, because I've actually had it where sellers are like, I need a minute. Like I need just like a minute here to like look at all this. And the problem is you have this sellers getting all this like blast of information. And then the agent wants to get a decision because they've got, 20 agents behind them asking like, is there an update? Is there an update? There's an update. And they get caught in the crossfire. And for me, like, I take it very seriously that like realtors' responsibility is to convey these properties, obviously well, ethically, but like also like responsibly, instead
Yeah.
of just like throwing everything. Okay, you have to make a decision right away. Like
Yeah.
that's when realtors do that. I think clients turn around and tell their coworkers, like, yeah, man, it was just like, it was crazy. Like, I don't know how organized they were or whatever. I try to like make it as like calm as possible.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the buyer side, like I just try to like, we bring Julie in, we bring the transaction person in, and we try to like say, this is what you got to do. And we plod along.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just the right way to do it. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that we can wrap it up at there. It's about the 30-minute mark.
All right.
And appreciate you guys hopping on, and we'll have you guys back though. We'll have you back and for part 2, and maybe we can get Jen out from the sideline of a soccer field here.
All right. That sounds great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.